All right, welcome everyone to the sixth CTO webinar. Uh, Ben April, great to see you.
Justin, good to see you, my friend.
Absolute pleasure. As always, this session is being recorded, so for anyone who's participating here on the webinar today, we will have a chat to be able to post some questions. We'll try to get to as many of those as possible in real time, but as always, the recording will be available after the fact. You can share with any of your team members or folks who weren't able to attend today. Additionally, any questions that we don't get to, or if there's any follow-up that might be appropriate based on some of the discussions that come up today, we'll we're happy to take that offline, and we'll make sure that people's contact information is available after the fact, so we can follow up. But with that being said, really excited about the topic today, Ben. This is something that ties in a lot of pieces that we've been talking about for many months now about kind of user experience and how that relates to the feedback we're getting from the market, from our customers, from folks within the community, and a lot of the work that you're doing and kind of shaping the roadmap and strategy for the company. So obviously a lot of exciting topics today, and we've got our special guest, Dr. Julie Wagner, who's going to join us in a moment, who I'll introduce in a little bit. But before we get into all that, I don't think we've had a chance to connect since before RSA. I know that this is always kind of like the love-hate relationship with such an incredible industry experience, but it's big. It's a lot of noise. But I'm curious, Ben, just out of curiosity, like what did you hear? What were some of your takeaways from RSA this year?
Oh, that's almost a tough one. There's just so much
I
going on. It's just sensory overload,
it feels like it is, yeah.
every step of the way. But I think, the thing I've probably noticed most was kind of last year, you could not take a step without seeing a new object with AI plastered on it.
Hmm.
I think that's decreased somewhat. It wasn't nearly as bad this year
Yeah.
in that sense, but there are some interesting products. People are more able to articulate what it is they think their AI is going to do
Yeah.
than they were last year. Everyone last year was just we have AI, and now it's getting a little more constructive, and you're actually able to have a conversation about the capabilities and the functionality of the tools. It's interesting to watch. I think probably the other buzzword I kind of caught as coming in second place, what I would say
Hmm.
is quantum, which is interesting to me. I mean, we
Yeah.
had that a few years ago. It was
Yeah.
a big concern, a big scare, and then it seemed to taper off, but it's back. So it's kind of interesting to kind of to compare the two and just kind of watch how they
No.
trend together. It'll be I'm kind of waiting to see if that trend holds at Black Hat or not. It's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, I thought it was a really great event, and kind of the reason I even bring it up, right, is because what we're talking about here is kind of user experience and some of the things that our customers and folks who are considering technologies like Maltego, what they can expect from the kind of the roadmap, and what that means with regard to like what we're hearing is some of the hot topics, things that are important to folks. And yeah, I had a very similar takeaway just around AI, quantum, a lot of other things like that. But with that as maybe the backdrop for the conversation today, at the end of the day, right, I think we're all trying to solve some really important and really like challenging problems, and it's great to know that vendors certainly like Maltego, but so many others also continue to innovate and try to tackle that next step in the challenge here. And with that said, we on that same roadmap, we talked on the last session, not with me personally. I felt a little hurt by that, but it was we had some important topics to discuss. But we made some recent announcements about two really strategic acquisitions that are putting us again firmly on that road to innovation and delivering some new value for our customers. Ben, I don't know if you want to just quickly touch on that for anyone who wasn't able to attend the last session, but kind of what's been going on, and kind of how's the reception been, and what are we doing now? What's the status there?
Yeah, so simply what went on is we acquired CrowdSense. The product name is PublicSonar. We also acquired a company called Freezing Data. Their product is Social Network Harvester. We are those products continue to function, continue to be in market and available to users. At the same time, we are in the process of mapping out exactly the path to integrating them directly into the Maltego ecosystem. PublicSonar is going to become our monitoring tool, looking at real-time situational awareness tools within right now primarily the social media space, but you could imagine it applying to kind of other data sets and sources in the fullness of time, giving you the ability to be notified when the state that was under control has changed, so you and your team can adapt. The other one, freezing data, social network harvester, is really about giving our investigators kind of the next step in terms of evidentiary integrity. So this is a tool that allows you to use your crawling accounts on various social media providers and collect data from those systems in a way that is useful in court as evidence. So most of the data we have around social media is very much a public view scenario. So if the user has locked down their account and is not visible to the public, the data sources we have generally can't see that. Having said that, if you as an investigator had a crawling profile that had been vetted into those communities and trusted among those users, you have ability to see those things. And now with Maltego evidence, you've got the ability to crawl those and collect it as evidence for use in your investigations going forward. So I think in both cases, they're just super powerful tools that expand the reach of what an investigator can do with the platform.
Yeah, and obviously there's a number of different kind of industries and segments of our customer base that would see a lot of value in that. I'm sure it also probably opens up the door for a lot of folks who hadn't considered Maltego to maybe look at some of the ways that we can add value to some of those types of workflows and certainly use cases. So really excited to have them join our little family here, and yeah, we're excited to see what the road ahead looks like. Speaking of which, 4.7, we have a new release.
4.7.0 is out. This was last month, I think. It's been a while since we've had this session. We've had a couple other things going on.
Yeah, that's right.
Main features, one I've been asking for a while, graph recovery. So your laptop runs out of battery. Next time you start Maltego, it'll remember that, hey, you were working on a graph. Do you want to recover it? That's been a quality of life feature for a while.
Yeah.
The Maltego v3 transform protocol now has what we call enhanced prompt capabilities. So as the transform is running, if there's a need for more information, the protocol now supports the ability to pop up on the investigator's screen additional questions. So this allows you to really, maybe you run a query that gives you back 10 million results, and this could give you a filter, couple choices for filtering how you want to limit that set to make it manageable for your investigation. Once we get Julie on, we'll talk about the guided onboarding tours. This is a really neat, really cool process, kind of reminiscent of starting a new multiplayer game, where you can, as you start the product, it will actually give you kind of point out the features, capabilities, make sure that everyone's on an even playing field for getting started. Let's see, we've also made the reports a little more generic, so it doesn't necessarily say Maltego in on every entity.
Nice,
tiny change, but makes a big difference. And the last one I'll mention here, in and among other tweaks and fixes, is by default we removed the Run All Transforms button. It's still available if that's how you want to roll. It's under the settings in Transforms. You can turn that back on. But one of the things we've kind of observed is there are some investigators who have a tendency to run all transforms, but not necessarily. That's not necessarily the most valuable way to do it. If you don't understand kind of what the transform is telling you and how that information maps into what you're trying to understand. It presents the risk that you may draw the wrong conclusion. So we're trying to steer more towards kind of being selective and intentional about what you're running. We've got some some cool tools in development that will make that even easier as we move forward. But yeah, that's the big list for now.
That is a big list, and honestly, one of the themes or currents that's kind of running through all of those seems to be the topic of today's conversation, which is the user experience. And a little bit is obviously not by accident. We put this webinar together, right? But I think when we think kind of like of the life cycle of some of the concepts and things that make it onto our roadmap, we've been talking about a lot of these capabilities for months and months now, right? But the timeliness of this discussion, I think, is really important, and we will introduce Julie here in just one second. But I wanted to maybe just ask you before we bring her in to talk a little bit more about this, from your perspective, and obviously your experience just in your career, but also here at Maltego. What is kind of the importance of the kind of the user experience and like that research and how that plays into, again, how it informs decisions that you're making, prioritization, specific capabilities? How important is that for you and really for the for the other teams that are impacted?
I think it's absolutely critical, right? So when Maltego first started, it was very much a tool by investigators for investigators. Yeah. And the language implied was very, very much aligned with, as an investigator, I know I need to click over here, or I know this is the kind of thing I want to do next. And, to some degree, it was obvious to the users. Over time, as the scope and scale of investigators that use the tool grow, we've got to walk a very fine line between providing, continuing to provide the same level and scope of capability to all our investigators, while not, overwhelming a new user with 400 buttons and, lots of time mousing over each one to figure out what they're trying to do. That's a challenge. And, one of the best ways we have to solve that is, just careful user experience research, understanding what the users are trying to get done. We learn a lot by some of the programs Julie will explain here about, what it is they really need versus what the tool does. And, we're working on ways to really improve that experience and, optimize time to investigation and, all those aspects to really make sure that it's really, what the user needs and present it in a way that a user can grasp. We do a lot of training. We have an amazing training team. So we're trying to kind of walk that line of, increasing and expanding capability without adding complexity, and if possible, reducing complexity without hiding features from users who need them. So it's a very delicate balance, and Julie and her team do a great job kind of helping us understand the scope and understanding. In terms of prioritizing features, that's a key piece of it is, what can we do to improve the user experience and make the tool more effective for the user? That feeds right into the equation.
Yeah, love it. And honestly, like, I've heard we've talked about it quite a bit, right? But that focus on quality and consistency and reliability, right, of our product is so tied to that user experience, right? And the feedback loop there. Let's dive into it a little bit. And so, without further ado, Dr. Julie Wagner, who is the head of user experience research at Maltego, welcome to the CTO webinar.
Hey, Julie.
Hello, hi guys.
Hey, Julie.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk to us. And of course, we collaborate on almost a daily basis here anyway, but it's really exciting to have you here today because as you've just heard and as the audience has heard, the importance for us on user experience and what that kind of means, all the different facets of the business and our go-to-market and our customer experience that touches on is so critical. So, with that being said, and I'd love to give you a chance to quickly introduce yourself, because I know you have a really kind of rich background and a lot of work related to what you're doing here today. So maybe if we just take half a step back to quickly introduce yourself, and also maybe help us understand kind of the mission and values of the user experience research team, and kind of how that plays out here at Maltego.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Julie. I'm head of UX research, and as a user experience researcher, our goal is to ensure that the Maltego product meets the need of our users. And in order to ensure that, we run certain research activities to investigate the workflows, the user needs, the pain points of our customers. And with that, our mission, or my team, works very hard based on this knowledge that we collect systematically, to create novel user experience inside the tool that is both technical sound, but also valuable and relevant for our customers. And we do that by basically diving into the domain knowledge, really understanding the particular users, their use cases, their goals, get a holistic understanding first, but also, as Ben mentioned, as the team grew from only investigators developing for investigators, with the complexity, we have now designers, we have engineers who have no background knowledge necessarily in this whole field of investigative tasks. And with this domain knowledge and this holistic understanding, we also need to train and teach internally the teams to empathize with our end users and to understand what the problem is that we are trying to solve. And with that being said, it means that also we are working with lots of different teams, not just in the beginning, maybe with designers, with engineers, but as you mentioned, also with communications, with marketing in the end. And I think the most important mission of the UXR team is that we want to involve end users into the process. That's very crucial to get to a product that's relevant and useful to investigators.
Yeah, I think that's so important what you're saying there, and I know that in principle, right, any vendor in this space that is creating a product that's supposed to be solving a problem kind of has to have this in the back of their mind. But I'm kind of wondering, you touched on a few things about how you really approach this, and what that means for some of the team members that support this function at Maltego and for our customers. What's an example of how you actually leverage these resources and these folks on your team to get closer to that user experience and really understand? You talked about empathy, you talked about kind of understanding their journey. What's an example of the output of that when you think about kind of how that translates to, again, feedback that you're getting, and what that means for us on on the product roadmap and our capabilities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one example could be the research that we recently done on reporting. So we studied.
Huge topic, yeah.
Say again?
I said it's a huge topic for, I know, a lot of our customers.
It's a huge topic. It's I would say it's underdeveloped in Maltego so far. It's definitely something that we need to improve on, because when you dig into reporting, the first is that you understand that for most of our customers, especially in private law enforcement, a report means the product they sell. Yeah. So it's very important to them. And what we've learned from talking to our customers is that reporting is very much connected to your investigation. It's not surprising, but I mean, they are specific. They start very early in the process with the report. And that means we should support that also during the investigation, that you create bits and pieces of the report that you just tie together into a story at the end. so that we make people more efficient in reporting. Which brings me to the second insight, it's this tying the story, right? So it's very important to them to write a compelling report, and that's not just a data dump. And this is what I found in my investigation. It's really telling the story with pictures where they show, my Maltego graph is very good in showing connections, but then putting it into a report means cleaning it up, highlighting things you want to point out, adding text to visually explain why you show this image. And all these pieces of information are important for us to improve on the reporting feature. So that's will definitely have a significant improvement in the future, and we are very excited about that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's an aspect of this that is very kind of aspirational, right? And Ben, I can imagine from your perspective, right, when you talk about how this impacts or kind of informs the roadmap, there has to be an element here that's like a bit of a challenge to you as well, right? It's like, hey, the user experience is not just about making the interface, more engaging or prettier, right? It's about delivering more value, and what does that mean? And so, in the concept of exactly what we're talking about here in reporting, being able to take kind of static data points that are just connected visually and tell a story with that has to be kind of maybe an exciting challenge for you, Ben, thinking about, okay, what do we need to do from a product perspective to be able to deliver that to our customers? You're on, I don't know if you're on mute.
Unmute.
But the sounds.
Oh, now does that work?
That's better.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely exciting, and I think probably the most exciting piece for me is like the when Julie comes out with an insight, and it's like, yeah, I knew that, but I learned it as a researcher, so I didn't actually. No one ever said, you do X then Y then Z. Yeah. It was just the natural way to learn it, but kind of hearing those. Hearing insights like that having been developed, observationally is kind of a really powerful tool, because like, oh yeah, that's just been intuition from my perspective, but now it's, now it's something we can explicitly, engineer towards, and really kind of adds to the excitement of the whole thing. That's pretty.
Yeah, and Justin, that's exactly now the point in when you go and talk about the process. So what to do with these insights? It's really translating them into actionable items, right? What can we do in the product? And I'm not trying to bias people. So I'm trying to put it into, like, we call it how might we questions. How might we allow customers to do this and that? So I'm trying to formulate their problem, their challenge, in a way that's not biasing them to a solution, because the solutioning is a whole different step in this process, which is very much cross-collaborative with different teams, and ideally, and that's something we experimented with recently, where we also involve a customer. So we have participatory co-design session where a customer comes with a sample data, a specific problem that goes into that kind of supports this insight, and then together we are having this co-design session, and we come up with a solution in this workshop.
Yeah, something that's stood out to me in our conversations leading up to this, and I'm sure is very apparent to the audience here, is that you're very passionate about the work that you do, right? This comes from something beyond just, this is my job and I have to do it. Can you maybe give us a little insight into how you became interested in this space, kind of what led you to your current role here?
Yeah, so my background is in computer science, and I specialized in human-computer interaction, which is an interdisciplinary field between design, psychology, and computer science. And then during my studies, I was in a computer science department, so it was not really mixed up with these other disciplines. I was building up an interactive table, and I was creating like a touch detection, visual detection of touch and objects on this table and so on. But I was unsatisfied with the solution in the end, because it was very much a technical contribution only, and kind of the use cases of how this, I imagined it to be used, were kind of taken from thin air, right? It was not really a basis. So then after this, I learned about a project in France where I did my PhD, and it was like an interactive room with large interactive wall-sized displays. You had a Vicon tracking, you had an interactive tabletop, and all any kind of technology, name it, it was in this room. And we had like lots of engineers maintaining and creating and kind of developing and keeping this alive. But the main the head of this project, she was a experimental psychologist, and her focus was very much in bringing real users into this with their data into this environment. So that there were astrophysicists, biologists, neuroscientists, so people with lots of data. And we were able in this setup to experiment and to elaborate, create interaction techniques together with them. And that allowed me to really dive into this. So I worked with astrophysicists, and I learned a lot about their domain knowledge. Then I observed them using our interactive wall and kind of working with their data collaboratively. And then together with them, we were able to create such rich interaction techniques, rich and informed. And so deeper in a sense, because it really went into their domain. It really was a hard nut to crack. And that's something I would also like to bring to Maltego. So it's super important to not only make tech-driven solutions, but bring the techies together with the domain experts. And damn, there is magic happening when you do that.
Yeah, I love that. Are you, it sounds like you have that kind of perspective of, yes, of course, the technical and requirements, things like that, but also, I'm hearing in here a little bit about kind of the business side as well, and understanding kind of the needs of both kind of, yes, end user at a technical level, but what is the business impact, right? What does the business need to understand about our capabilities? How are you kind of leveraging that perspective here at Maltego? What about kind of the Maltego journey makes your experience so relevant to this role?
Yeah, so this is really this kind of dual focus I need to keep throughout my work, in deciding also in which areas, together with our product team, in which direction to go. And that's also how I plan my research around it. But having said that, sometimes we also discover things in research by accident. We observe things that we didn't expect, that those are the most interesting insights, actually. And ideally, this is also informing back our business strategy, so to say. So of course, I'm aligned always with what our organization, what Maltego wants to achieve as well, what customers would like to do and to improve their life as well. And at the same time, we are with our insights, we are also trying to drive business directions, business strategy, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's great. I think it'd be interesting to kind of see a bit of like where the rubber meets the road when it comes to, okay, so we've got this great kind of process leading into this. We've got some really good kind of like perspective coming into this research and kind of leveraging the perspective of users and understanding kind of their needs. How does that play out at Maltego with regard to, some of the research process and more importantly, like what are some of the outputs of that? Do we have some examples of like what some of the outputs of this work is for our customers or our product?
So one of the output examples that I could show, of course, are the released onboarding improvements in the product. But maybe also before that, so I talked about the topic on reporting. That's something that we're currently working on. We have other topics or worked on other topics where we observed how senior senior investigators structure their investigation. And we found a kind of pattern of how they think, how they structure, how they divide up their investigation into smaller pieces to kind of cope with it. And we want to use this insight to translate kind of this best practice to also novice users that use Maltego. So that's maybe also a mission or something that we are trying with the UXR team, is to learn from expert users and to guide novice, to incorporate this as a user experience in the tool. So to guide novice users who are not as experienced with the tool, but also with the domain, kind of get guided from Maltego, inside Maltego, to understand, to get the right information explained in the moment they seek for help, and to really understand and approach an investigation in a structured and effective way. So that's also
yeah, well, and we've talked a lot about kind of the research, right? And I know you're going to show some examples here of you know, a little bit of like how that kind of plays out. But I think you touched on this already, but maybe if you can just double click on kind of the kind of user panel and some of the ways that we at Maltego actually kind of leverage this methodology to inform, again, some of the specific improvements that we're making. Can you talk us through what that looks like and, you know, kind of what that process is a little?
Yeah, so we created this user panel, which is a program to involve our end users, our customers, into our process of shaping the features to come in the far future, not in production ready or testing mode, but more really in concepting stage. And this is the Maltego user panel is this program where the customers can sign up and get regularly informed about the research activities we do. And then if this topic seems kind of interesting to them, they can jump in and just take a time slot and be part of this research activity and inform the concepts that we are showing them, inform future features that we are shaping with them together. And the interest from a user's perspective, from a customer perspective, is usually that it's for them interesting that the tool that they are using, that they are having in their company, is shaped in a way to meet their needs, to make them more efficient, to address their customer feedback. And they see that throughout the process, how we kind of bring that into the roadmap and realize it. So that's quite exciting for them.
Yeah, I love that. So, you know, we talked about some of the changes or improvements that we're making as a result of this process. Could you share maybe some examples of what that looks like and you know, help you know, our listeners and audience kind of get a better sense of what that looks like? I know you had a couple of slides or things that we could share here.
Okay, so I can walk you through the improvements in the tool, the onboarding improvements. So in this onboarding, you see my screen? In
Yes,
this onboarding experiments, we basically focused on, we started with gathering lots of information we have through support tickets, through our customer success team, and we kind of aligned it, sketched it out, and identified the areas we need to focus on. And we decided to focus in this onboarding experience on 3 problems, or we provide 3 solutions. The first one is that customers, when they are new to the tool and they install Maltego, it's overwhelming to them to understand the concept around hub items and transforms. So instead of having or installing a Maltego client with the Maltego standard transforms, we thought, okay, how can we give them maybe a pre-installation, a Maltego selection item, that is maybe tied to a specific use case that we observe frequently be used by our customers, person of interest. Cryptocurrency is also one example, so that they don't start at zero and really already have quite, some powerful transforms to use to immediately see value. So this is this screen where you go through the configuration wizard in Maltego, and depending on, of course, what also which plan you are in, you might also see the data path for the cryptocurrency or person of interest, or as I mentioned, the Maltego selection. The next problem that we focused on is, okay, now you have it successfully installed your Open Maltego. How to get started? What is this here? Where do I open a graph? What is a graph? What is an entity? What's the how do I get from one information to the other? And for that, we included this product tour where we explain, we're basically highlighting the main aspects in the UI. We explain what it's used for. We include videos to show you how to run transforms, explain a little bit about the transform menu. And then you get to this, this third part or improvement, which is the guides, the step-by-step guides that walk you through a specific type of investigation and explain you a little bit first how to run these transforms and how to interpret it and to understand the result. So important here is that we wanted people not to only show a video and they watch a video of how to do an email address investigation. We wanted them to actively do the clicking, go through the UI and just get the instruction of what needs to be done next. And by this, we hope that people learn better just by being already in the tool, running already the required actions, and the guidance that we show them, and I show that in the next video, explains a little bit, okay, what do you do with the result? So it's really giving you the instruction, run this and that transform, and then the result is also kept to very thin. I mean, there's just one or two entities that we return. It's just an example case, so we don't want to overload people, but they can quickly grasp the value of Maltego.
Yeah, this is obviously extremely powerful, especially for folks who aren't as familiar with the tool, or or just kind of started on this path in their own careers. There's obviously a need for kind of continuous improvement here, right? So there's like a constant feedback loop. We come up with ideas, we get feedback, and then we have to bring it back to the team and put it into the product, and then that cycle continues, right? To make sure that we're constantly kind of evaluating. Can you maybe walk us through a little bit of what that process looks like, Julie, in terms of, a bit of that, yes, like the research itself, the research process, but kind of also in that kind of perpetual idea of always improving. What does that continuous improvement kind of model look like for your team?
Yeah, so in small, what you see now is something we call a customer journey. And you don't need to read it, but just the yellow stickies on top, basically, we try to capture the steps you need to go through from a user perspective in a common investigation. And the green sticky notes are it's filtered, but are basically the user feedback that we get through our research activities, through support tickets, through customer facing teams as a feedback from our customers. And so in the process of this onboarding or in any other project as well, the first challenge is to focus, because of course we get lots of feedback, we get lots of requirements of our customers. How do we focus? And this is how we got to this focus that I did, the 3 improvements that I just outlined, as maybe you focus on where you get the most of feedback of many customers, for example. Or it also is important, maybe you have just a time frame of what you can do and to improve of developer resources. What can you do in this time frame, right?
Yeah.
This is also affecting the focus. So once you have this focus and a specific problem to solve, you go into this co-design workshop that I talked about, where and that's the fun part here, where you really get into sketching out, and we're building on each other ideas and draw like interface solutions for these problems, and ideally with an end customer as well. And again, we are diverging and then focus again. We selecting which idea to follow, which is most feasible, technical feasible, which is most viable for customers and valuable to them. And this is how we get to a more refined design process, really with our design team, where we could go into detail. We involved, and this is where you see all the sticky notes coming from, involve different teams to provide feedback on communication. As I mentioned, marketing, language is very important. The SMEs, the subject matter experts, provide feedback on what they would like to see change to make it easier to grasp for our end users. So, and this brings you really iteratively from an idea to a concrete UI change or feature.
Yeah, you know, something that stands out to me here, and there's obviously a lot of you know, as we like to say, right, kind of see how the sausage is made. It can be like it's complex, you know, where we're not solving simple problems anyway, but you know, for a minor, you know, tweak seemingly to the end user, to the interface, or to whatever, the process that goes into it, and again, kind of that constant feedback loop. What are some of the challenges you run into when it comes to being able to collect that information, and maybe more importantly, how can users and customers get involved in that process? It's obviously very, you know, it can be deeply tied to like the future roadmap of Maltego. So yeah, what are some of the challenges you run into, and how can customers help?
Yeah, so it seems like a thread through my in my career in the industry that I always worked in fields where the customer, so it was always a B2B product with very sensitive, data sensitive customers. So before I worked at Maltego, I worked for Fujitsu, and I was working on a server management tool. And as you can imagine, those end users were also not really opening all their doors to go into their data centers and observe them. But I would say a significant approach or goal of in UXR is also to build up this kind of level of trust with certain customers that allow you to observe them in their real environment. So in this Fujitsu example, for example, a customer allowed me to visit the offices once a week. So I had my desk just next to a server manager. And this was so great. It was nothing that was planned. It was really, I was doing my usual work as in home office at home. I would do it there, like next to their desk. But each time something happened and some new alarm occurred, some hardware failed, anything, they were like saying, come over, watch what I'm doing. And I was observing, I was documenting, and this documentation was to an extent where I was really in depth able to replicate almost what they did, or I was able to answer all the questions that came from the technical team. And so it was significantly informing and improving the server management tool, especially because there was also a cultural clash between my Japanese colleagues and the European way of or management needs in data centers. And I would like to translate that to Maltego. That's why we started this program. So I'm sharing this Maltego user panel page, and there's the link also to this page, so you can read it through at your own time. I would be happy to see some of you apply to this and to participate in our research activities.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I have to imagine, Ben, for you, right, to have a team and to have someone at the head of that team and that effort that brings us so close to our customers and to the user experience must be invaluable for you.
It's absolutely critical. I'll say that, the feedback I get from, colleagues and investigators out on the field who have, been on a call, been on a user panel with Julie and her team is just kind of mind blowing. I think they'd rather hang out with you than with me. Yeah, it's just great stories about how, they feel more productive having, Julie ask questions about why do you do it this way, and how do you what are you thinking about here? That
it's an interesting, yeah, that's an interesting aspect, definitely. That's kind of a side effect that by my questioning and my documentation of this whole process, they kind of reevaluate their own workflows and sometimes improve and make it more effective. Yeah.
Yeah, they've never been asked, why did you do this step next? What made you do that? And it's not something it's almost autonomic. It hadn't been something they thought about. And yeah, it's been, incredibly valuable in terms of, that whole life cycle process dovetails essentially right into our development process. So we're, constantly adding pieces of this, insight and feedback right into the process. Justin, we've teased about, the beta that started around like the new browser-based tools in time and space. Julie and her team's fingerprints are all over that. And continuing to work on, adding new capabilities and new features, and in ways that, we wouldn't have thought of before because we have these insights. The other thing I should mention is, we have also a dedicated design team working with UXR. So it's a, obviously it's a collaboration kind of across the board. But, Julie's team is really focused on, the how and the why and the mechanics of the interaction. And then we've got our design team who, makes it look like Maltego. And it's a really fun process to observe. It just kind of just continuously.
I may add that it's also very important to advocate this user-centered approach and these insights throughout the process, because it's like almost like this kind of a game where you pass on information from one step to the other, and it magically reduces, and people forget about the initial kind of motivation and the reasons why we wanted to do things. So you really in each process you need to watch that you always keep the user in focus and in mind.
Yep. Yeah. Our investigators are why we're here. Making it possible for them to solve the puzzles they're setting out to solve. So it just makes sense that we put this much focus on understanding what it is they need to be successful.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal. Well, look, I'm sure we could spend, several hours talking about the kind of some of the nuances of how this approach and your role and the function of this team kind of impacts our customers and the product, of course. But maybe to make sure that we've got the key takeaways from today's discussion, and so that our audience and anyone who may be watching after the fact can take advantage of some of the work that your team is doing. Remind us again how they can get involved, and what that process looks like, just so that we can make sure people are clear on what the action item is if they do want to start to participate.
Yeah, so access this webpage, and you can apply by answering some questions about your use case and how experienced you are with Maltego. So like some initial demographic information that we need to identify which of the studies are most suited to you as an end user. Sometimes we do research activities with experts, sometimes with novice users, sometimes with a specific use case in mind. And then once you've signed up, you receive a document like where we align and where you agree that we conduct this kind of research activities with you, and where we say how we handle the data and when we delete the data, for example, so that's all conform. And once that's done, you're in this group Maltego user panel, and regularly once twice a month get an invite to a research activity, and you can decide on your own, is that an interesting topic I want to participate, I want to talk about, I can contribute. And if so, you can sign up and pick a time slot from our calendar and participate. No preparation needed, just come and I will do everything to guide you through the session and to provide the feedback that we need and to kind of inform our tool the best way possible.
Yeah, wonderful. Julie, I can't thank you enough, not just for participating today, but for the work that you and your team are doing. I know that, Ben and I, since the beginning of this kind of series, have talked about the importance of not just can we do it, but why are we doing it? How is it helping? And obviously the work that your team is doing is pivotal in that area, and really appreciate all the work that you do. So with that being said, we're at the end of our time here today. Julie, thank you again for the guidance on this, and certainly we'll make sure that anyone who wants to follow up with that link and get involved can do so. Ben, I know you and I will be talking again here shortly, but thank you also to you and your team for some of the releases that are coming out, and I think our community should be really excited about some of the stuff that's coming like imminently, and it's going to be an exciting year.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely a super exciting year. The betas are underway. Encourage people to talk to the appropriate contact, because there's some definitely some things to check out and see some of Julie and her team's works in action. Yeah, very excited about what the future holds. It's going to be an interesting ride.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks to both of you. Thanks to our audience. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out if you ever want to connect and talk further. But we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Justin.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.